Moving beyond the borders now, Eswatini's pro-democracy groups want SADC to send a peacekeeping mission to that country. This comes after the groups met with a delegation sent by President Cyril Ramaphosa in his capacity as the chairperson of the SADC Organ on Defense, Politics and Security Cooperation. Former Minister Radebe and Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Candith Mashego-Dlamini, met with King Mswati III, the Eswatini government officials and pro-democracy groups. The country is plagued by unrest that started in late June, with citizens calling for democratic reforms in Africa's last absolute monarchy. The unrest has led to the deaths of so many people, some injuries, arrests and extensive damage to properties. And there are claims of police using live ammunition on protesters.
SADC Special Envoy in Eswatini, meeting with King Mswati III and pro-democracy groups. The envoy is in the country to listen to all sides and try to ease tension in the tiny kingdom. The president of the Unrest National Liberatory Congress says they are hopeful that the engagements will bring peace and stability.
He decided some were burnt alive, some have been shot, others are continuing to die. In the rural areas, they are being pulled out from their homes and some thrown into crocodile rivers. This is the attitude that our king has. So when President Ramaphosa sent Chief Radebe leading a delegation to come and look at the impasse, it gives us some hope. And what we inquired from Troika this time was, where is the report? Because they came to Swaziland, they took our submissions. We said, where is the report? Because it was neither discussed nor debated, nor was it in the agenda in the SADC meeting in Malawi. And they said, no, the report is there, but it was handed to the king. And we have never seen it with our naked eye.
Pro-democracy groups have urged the chairperson of SADC Organ on Defense, Politics and Security, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to send a peacekeeping mission to the country. There are claims that at least 28 people have lost their lives since last week.
We ask that he sends a peacekeeping unit to face the army, King Mswati's army, that is slaughtering a Mswati every day. Another thing that we sent to advise King Mswati to open talks where we are going to tell him what the Mswati are looking for. They are looking for democracy and nothing less.
Nurses have also joined the protest against the killing of citizens and have vowed not to treat injured police or soldiers. Government has stopped issuing protest permits and still restricting social media networks. Dumela Machogo, SABC News.
Meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa says that SADC will support the kingdom as it embarks on the process of a national dialogue regarding the ruling system. Political activists are now calling for the country to be declared a republic and the government to be voted in. The SADC envoy team met with the King, the Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini, Deputy Prime Minister Senator Themba Masuku, civil society, political organizations and trade unions. All stakeholders agreed to open up the space for talks to address the challenges facing the kingdom. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch says it's disappointed by SADC's response.
The President of South Africa, as head of the SADC Organ Troika on Defense, Politics and Security, has issued a statement on the crisis in Eswatini, which is disappointing in that there is a call for national dialogue that has to happen through the appropriate platform. This implies that the king has to convene this dialogue through the Isibaya, which has previously repeatedly failed to yield results and to accommodate all voices and players. There have been significant complaints from people inside Eswatini that this process of the SADC Organ Troika has been useless so far. So this is quite concerning. especially because the crisis is escalating, the protests are continuing, and SADC is not taking decisive steps to intervene and ensure the protection of the lives of the people of Eswatini.
For more on the situation in Eswatini, we're now joined by Wandile Dludlu, the Secretary General of the People's United Democratic Movement, PUDEMO. Wandile, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Thank you very much, my brother, and welcome to viewers at home.
You know, Wandile, the past week we've seen one of the worst forms of police brutality on innocent civilians, unarmed civilians, and in some instances, as per the videos we've seen on social media, the armed forces throwing tear gas inside a bus full of pro-democracy protesters. And I understand there's calls for a national shutdown in the coming days. So it does appear that the pro-democracy movement and the labor movement and political parties alike in Eswatini are not relenting in their calls for democratic reforms, isn't it?
Certainly, Simpiwe, and it is very clear that the people of Swaziland want democracy. They want democracy, and they are prepared to bleed, they are prepared to die for it, as long as the king continues not to listen to the calls for democracy. We have 5 common points, what we call the 5 civil society common points, which basically speaks about unbanning of political parties, allowing a new a democratic constitution, as well as a variety of other human rights and good governance demands.
Well, we've seen the SADC mission in the country as per the deployment of the SADC, chairperson on Organ on Defense, President Cyril Ramaphosa. And it does appear that the SADC delegation this time around is trying to redeem itself after a disastrous visit the last time, wherein, they did not include the other pro-democracy, activists and other political parties in their discussions and consultations. It does appear that this time around, their consultations were wide-ranging and all-embracing. Are you at all happy with the SADC mission in the country?
We welcome the efforts that have been made by the chairperson of SADC through the delegation as led by Comrade Jeff Radebe. We look forward. We did participate as all, which is quite encouraging this time, and we are looking forward to a more decisive action on the part of SADC and South Africa in particular. As a trading partner, as a neighbor, we cannot afford to tiptoe and move around like we are not sure what we're doing when there are glaring signs of flagrant abuse of state power by the king, complete a violation of human rights, and adamancy on genuine calls for political transformation. We want democracy and we want power from the monarchy to a constitutional democracy.
Now, Wandile, when you're saying that you expect SADC to take decisive action, what exactly is it that you expect SADC to do?
To relay the message, which is an aggregate demand of the people, to the king, and also apply the conventions and treaties that Swaziland is a signatory to. There is, for instance, the SADC Democracy and Elections, 2009 Mauritius Declaration on Elections and Democracy, which spells out the conditions and yardsticks that all African countries, SADC countries, must uphold. We have AU conventions on human rights and good governance that Swaziland is a signatory to. We cannot allow a situation where governments and head of state go and sign and commit, and in their backyard violate all this with impunity. This is humans' life, these are Swazi's life, and Swazi's life matter, and we think and deserve a more decisive, resolute reaching against human rights violation, against regimes that refuse to respect the rule of law, as well as the right of nations to rule themselves, which is exactly what the king is doing. We fought against colonial masters exactly for this, and the monarchy has taken us back there. where it is denying us our right to self-determination and a right to run a government of our own, hire and fire a government based on performance, obviously.
Now, Wandile, the pro-democracy movement expects individual, regional countries to condemn what you call corruption on the part of the monarchy and the lack of democracy in its entirety in the Kingdom of Eswatini. So who among your neighbors should speak, and what exactly should they say and do?
We call on all SADC members, and South Africa in particular. There has got to be someone who gives the lead, and someone who takes the leadership,
yes, and
someone who upholds the standards. Swazis are doing their part. But obviously we are fighting a state well-resourced, enjoying far more advantages than we would do, which is why to some degree we need the support of governments in the region. We cannot we continue to talk about African solutions for African problems. So this is the time to stand up and show the world that Africans are able to solve their own problems. Certainly, Swazis are faced with the monarchy that has grown to be totally something that is not what we all anticipate a monarchy to be. Even when we speak about our African traditions and cultures, what His Majesty and the monarchy today in Swaziland is totally contrary to our customary law, to our values, and to our principles as Africans. You can't have a king who does business and still is a leader. You can't have a king who kills his own people and soil his throne with blood of innocent, unarmed civilians. It can't, and we must stand up. And it is on that basis why we say, South Africa, we can't. It must stand up, both because you're also a biggest trade partner. You can't trade with a government whose hands are full of blood. You can't trade with a partner who violates everything that we stand for. So we expect some decisive action, if need be, some form of sanctions.
Now, Wandile, I want us to extend our analysis into the extent of the democratic reforms that you're calling for. Do you want a constitutional monarch wherein the monarchy shares power with the people, or you want Swaziland to be declared a republic and King Mswati gone?
Simpiwe, the biggest challenge in Swaziland is the lack of democracy, is the lack of political freedom. Swazis, whether are in political parties or individuals, in Swaziland they do not have a right to freely express, to freely think politically and also act. Political freedom, political thought is banned and criminalized in Swaziland. That, in our view, is the most important thing. What shape and form it take, Swazis will decide that. The most important thing, which is why from PUDEMO's end, we advocate for a constitutional multi-party democracy, because we think that is the most important thing that Swazis need. Whether it then turns out to be a republic or it becomes a constitutional monarch, Swazis will decide that freely. And in our view, constitutional multi-party democracy, freedom is what Swazis need the most.
A multi-party democracy with King Mswati still a king, or multi-party democracy and scrapping off the monarchy altogether?
Simpiwe, the biggest problem Swazis have is freedom.
Yes.
Let us not be too boggled around what the king will be and where the king will be. Let us all as Africans be more concerned about political freedom in that country called Swaziland, so that Swazis can freely organize themselves in a way that best works for them. If the monarchy embraces that it is time for multi-party, it will certainly, in one way or the other, become part of that future. But if the monarchy continues not to listen as it does, if the monarchy digs in as it does, kills our people as it does, steal our land as it does, take our minerals as it does, arrogantly treat with disdain our people as it does, certainly it risks not being part of the future.
When last did the progressives and the political party movement in Swaziland have an audience with the king? I mean, what is he saying about this? Because my understanding is that his response to the calls for pro-democracy, he just watered them down. He called some of these pro-democracy protesters as drunkards who are high on marijuana. So it reveals the depth of antipathy on the people who are calling for multi-party democracy in Swaziland. So any indication that you might have a cordial relation, or rather a cordial discussion with His Majesty? Because I do understand that he's now slowly easing into negotiating with the political movement.
In our view as PUDEMO, Simpiwe and viewers, the future of Swaziland lies with Swazis themselves. We say in our strategy and tactic, the first principle, the liberation of the Swazi people shall be the act of the people themselves. It does not hinge, the future of this country doesn't hinge with the monarchy. The monarchy is a subset. In fact, it's not even a subset. It's a product of our own making. We can certainly assure you, Simpiwe, our future will not be determined by the monarchy. It will be determined by the collective wisdom of the Swazi nation. With or without the monarchy, there will be a new Swaziland, there will be a democracy, there will be a government that will be elected by the people, power will only vest in a parliament that shall only be in the hands of a majority party from time to time. So we're not too worried about whether the king laughs or cries or insults us or what. There are many people who insult us. There are many people here who think we are mad. There are many people who think we are crazy. But we are extremely encouraged that history and reality is vindicating our demands that we have been making as PUDEMO and the various pro-democracy forces for the last 4 decades. You like it or he doesn't. The king, what he is doing is as good as holding a tsunami, trying to hold a tsunami with his own hands. And we wish him all the best.
Wandile Dludlu, lovely chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Most welcome, my brother.
All right, that was Wandile Dludlu, the Secretary General of a political party movement in the Kingdom of Eswatini, the PUDEMO, People's United Democratic Movement. This is The Globe on SABC News. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a